When we take up the rights and duties of states, as I mentioned to you, there are essentially three basic duties of states. The first duty is not to perform acts of sovereignty in the territory of another state. The second duty is to prevent its subjects from violating the sovereignty and integrity of another state. Now, the third most important one is not to intervene in the internal affairs of another state. Under the present day international law, as students of law, you must have heard about Article 2, Paragraph 7 of the Charter of United Nations. Even the United Nations will not interfere in the domestic jurisdiction of a particular state. But then, under the prevailing rules, there are instances wherein the states, in spite of these provisions, have intervened in the internal affairs of another state. Now, why did they intervene? What exactly are the reasons for their intervention, and what it has cost to the international community is the basic question in which we are interested. Now, when we take up this matter for purpose of discussion, now generally intervention or intervening in the internal affairs of another state must be much against the will of that state. The concerned state may not like the kind of intervention that is being done by an outside state. Now, the second important thing is it must be under coercion. By force, it tries to intervene in the internal affairs of another state. Now, the third important thing that is being spoken is a particular state tries to influence its policies in the sphere of another state, much against the will of that state. So, in circumstances such as this, the concerned state may become hostile and request the other state not to intervene in the internal affairs of another state. I can just give you one or two cases so that you understand the point better. Now, the state of Nicaragua versus the state of United States. This matter came up before the International Court of Justice, and the International Court of Justice delivered the judgment in the year 1986. Now, this happened to be a major case wherein the International Court of Justice had to discuss the entire issues relating to intervention. Now, there are questions which came in subversive intervention. Now, when I speak about the subversive intervention, it is done through propaganda, spending a lot of money by propaganda and trying to influence its decisions in the territory of another state. Now, this will also be considered as intervention in international law, as declared by the International Court of Justice. The other one is by force, you try to intervene. And see, you might be knowing in these days what is happening is a particular state has been lending loans to poorer countries. Having given so much of loan, the country which is poor is not in a position to pay back the loan. And thereafter, what happens is you try to intervene in the internal affairs of that state in one pretext or the other and start making use of its ports, making use of its harbors, making use of the internal territory for your advantage. Now, this is also a kind of intervention under international law. Now, after the Nicaragua case, there are other cases as well, wherein the International Court of Justice as well as the Court of Arbitration pointed out to consider an act as an intervention, it should qualify only one important thing. It should be to impair the political independence and sovereignty of that state. So, the very act of intervention done by a state is an attempt to impair the political integrity and the sovereignty of another state, then it will be called intervention. Now, the other important thing is, most important thing that is being spoken in the matter of intervention is, it tries to influence, the outside state tries to influence the foreign policy of that state. Now, you might be knowing in the recent past, you must have come to know, big powers try to influence the policies of poorer states, whose per capita income is very poor. Now, in circumstances such as this is also a type of intervention. Now, thereafterwards, when we speak about dictatorial intervention, there is one instance that is being given to human history, that is of dictatorial intervention. Now, this intervention happened to be a matter relating to an act of the state of the Federal Republic of Germany, the state of Germany, France, and the state of Soviet Russia. Now, these are the states who forced Japan to give back the territory of Liaotang to China. Now, this was not liked by the state of Japan. Japan took it offensive, and which has ultimately resulted in the Battle of Tsushima in the year 1904, wherein the Russo-Japanese War had taken place and the state of Soviet Russia was invaded. Rather, the state of Japan overran the entire territory of the state of Soviet Russia. Now, this is dictatorial intervention done by the state of Japan over the territory of Liaotang. Thereafterwards, we go to speak about the classifications of intervention. The classification of intervention, when I speak of, there are three. Mainly there are three. One is internal intervention. The second one is external intervention. Now, when we speak about the internal intervention, a particular state, when there is a fight between state A as well as B, what happens is, now state C joins with the state B to fight against state A. Now, this is called as internal intervention. So, the fight is between state A and B. Now, in order to fight against a group of C or state C supports state B. Now, this is called as internal intervention. When I speak of external intervention is in the event of an invasion, the other state or a solid, powerful state supporting the group in an act of aggression or invasion. For example, you might be knowing the state of Italy during the course of the First World War was equally supported by the state of Japan. Japan was one state which supported Mussolini in her conduct of invading, or what we call as world conquest, and even to a certain extent to the state of Germany. So, this is called as what we call as external intervention. Now, the other important thing that is being spoken is, there is one more which is called as subversive intervention. Now, subversive intervention that is being done through propaganda, through canvas, and you try to influence the attitude of the concerned state. And this is some states, especially there are instances wherein states spend huge money for a purpose of propaganda. And this propaganda goes that far, the concerned state which receives this propaganda, remember, is unable to withstand such a tempo. In circumstances such as this, it may go to the United Nations or other international or regional bodies to stop such kind of activities. Now, the last one is called as punitive intervention. When I speak of punitive intervention, it is short of war. Punitive intervention is an act which is short of war, which is generally called as reprisal. Suppose, for example, in the event of an attack, the concerned state which is being attacked tries to blockade the coast, entire coast, by way of a reprisal, so that the attack to that extent gets stopped. Now, when we go further, there are instances, plenty of instances which are given in textbooks on international law, which elaborates and refines the very concept of intervention. But then at the end, they are not able to give a specified, specific, satisfactory answer. Let me give you 2 to 3 illustrations relating to the very act of intervention. The first one happened to be the Spanish Civil War. The Spanish Civil War had taken place between 1936 and 1938. During the course of the Spanish Civil War, the state of Great Britain, in order to protect her trade interests and to protect her nationals in the state of Spain, naturally gives de facto recognition to the areas which has occupied which was occupied by the what we call as the revolutionaries. But then the areas which were actually controlled by the rulers, the original government, were still recognized as the de jure government. So the areas which were part of the de jure government, which are with them, are recognized as a de jure regime for all purposes. But the areas which were captured or conquered by the rebels or by the insurgents naturally was given de facto recognition. In circumstances such as this, the most of the great powers of the times felt that we should not indulge in such acts. We should not intervene in the internal affairs of the state of Spain. So all of them joined together, and in a conference they decided not to intervene in the internal affairs of the civil war of the state of Spain. But then, no sooner the ink which was dried, most of the states started taking active part in such kind of activities. Now, one such instance happened to be an instance which has taken place in 1958-9. Now, the Lebanon crisis took place. When the Lebanon crisis had taken place in the state of Lebanon, now the state of United States has supplied huge arms and dumped these arms in the state of Lebanon for the government of the state of Lebanon to fight the insurgents, the rebels. Now many people questioned the attitude of the American government, why the state of United States is supplying troops, large number of troops and ammunitions and assisting the Lebanese government. Now the state of Lebanon went to the extent of justifying it. But then the state of United States went to the extent of justifying it before international fora, saying that this act is being done at the behest of the state of Lebanon. We have a request from the state of Lebanon to assist them and to protect their sovereignty and independence and integrity. That is why we have supported them. But then at a later period, over a period of time, many scholars in the area of international law commented the very intervention of the state of United States by aiding, by helping, by giving, by sending troops was totally unjustified. This is an act which has taken place in 1958-1959. Thereafterwards we come to another important crisis that has taken place in Vietnam. In Vietnam, you might be knowing the fight that was going on between the rebels, the fight North Vietnam, South Vietnam, and the rebels, all of them. And the state of United States intervened in favor of South Vietnam in between 1964 and 1974. Now later, you might be knowing, you must have read also, the state of United States suffered huge loss there. And the attitude and the approach of the United States was not liked when it intervened in Vietnam. And many scholars in the area of international law go to the extent of pointing out whatever the reasons that is being given by big powers who are members of Security Council, but the very act and the conduct is not in accordance with the established rules of international law. Now then we go to the state of Afghanistan. Now when we go to the state of Afghanistan, you might be knowing in the year 1979 there took place a big crisis. When the crisis was taking place in the state of Afghanistan between the rebels as well as the legally established power, the rulers, the state of Soviet Russia supported the government. When the state of Soviet Russia supported the government openly by giving ammunition, arms, etc., and marching openly in the Afghan territory, the many scholars in the area of international law criticized this move. Now the state of Soviet Russia went to the extent of pointing out there is no other option except in supporting, but the rebels who are fighting against the legally established government was equally supported from outside. Now this kind of act, which is called as the East-West rivalry, was going on almost between 1945 to 1989. Now you might be again knowing it was in the year 1986 the Glasnost and Perestroika took place. Thereafter the Soviet Union was split into several states. And all these states today have become members of the international community. And for almost 15 to 20 years thereafter, we didn't have any problem of this. There was no question of East and West rivalry. And when it dominated the scene, these kind of things were taking place. I just intend to harp upon one more illustration that has taken place in the year 1962. It was in the year 1962 the famous Cuban crisis had taken place. Now the Cuban crisis had taken place at the behest of the state of United States, and the state of United States had taken this initiative on behalf of the OAS. Cuba happened to be a threat to the entire Organization of American States, which was a union, and which has come into existence not only to help each other but to maintain peace and security within the region. The very conduct of the state of Cuba for the state of United States was reprehensible, and the coast of Cuba was blockaded and the subsequent war. Now this was also at a later stage, after 10 years or 15 years, most of the scholars in international law, when they wrote about the crisis, they did not justify their stand. That is the point which we should, as students of international law, should know. Now another most important incident that has taken place happened to be the incident of 1976. It was in 1976 the Jewish nationals had boarded a French plane, and the ultimate destination of the plane happened to be the city of what we call as the Jewish state, Israel. And they have boarded, and the journey, when it was taking place, because of the acts of terrorism, the plane was diverted and it was taken to the state of Uganda. And Ugandan administration, it appears, was not in a position to take any decision or come to a compromise and to get the release of the Israeli nationals who were on board. In circumstances such as this, when nothing was happening, the state of Israel, the armed guards and what we call as the experts, they go to Entebbe in Uganda, and almost all the Jewish nationals who were in the aeroplane were freed. The moment they were freed, the state of Uganda went to the extent of crying that the state of Israel has violated Uganda's sovereignty. It has performed an act of sovereignty. The state of Israel has performed an act of sovereignty against the state of Uganda. And the matter was brought before the Security Council of the United Nations. The Security Council, having heard the case, pointed out, remember, the state of Uganda was not in a position to take an action. But then the very interference is violative of Article 2, Paragraph 4 of the Charter of United Nations. But then it did not pass any resolution to this effect. That is where the matter came to an end. And later the state of Israel went on justifying, when the nationals of a particular state are being targeted, they are being hijacked, they are being killed, they are being terrorized, the state which has given them the nationality has the right to protect them, was the explanation that was given by the state of Israel. Now I just intend to give you two more illustrations. The other illustrations happen to be the illustration relating to the United States consular staff in the state of Iran. Now what has happened was, in the year 1980, the American embassy personnel who are working in the state of Iran, the American nationals who were from the side of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs or the State Department of the state of United States, were working in the state of Iran, were, remember, hammered by the state of Iran. Now at this juncture, the state of United States made an unsuccessful attempt to hijack the American nationals or get them or free them, their own nationals, but then it miserably failed. Thereafter the matter went to the International Court of Justice, and when this incident was taking place, the petition of the state of United States was before the International Court of Justice, and the International Court of Justice refused to comment on this. It went to point out, under the existing rules of international law, for no reason the state should intervene in the internal affairs of another state. Then, as far as possible, they should be in a position to resolve the disputes amicably between them. That is how the judgment was given. Several other things were spoken which is not material to the concerned case at this juncture. Now, the last instance which I want to speak to you happened to be the invasion by Saddam Hussein of the state of Kuwait. And you might be knowing that Saddam Hussein, as the head of the state of Iraq, invaded the state of Kuwait. And not only he invaded the state of Kuwait, and thereafterwards he made it as a part of one of the districts of the state of Iraq. Now at this juncture, remember, Soviet Russia was split into several states and it was almost dismantled. And with the result, there was nobody to cast a veto like before, earlier. And there was unity and unanimity. And the Security Council took a decision, and afterwards collectively most of the members came and supported, and there was at the behest of the state of United States, along with the 30 powers of states who are members of the United Nations, were able to free Kuwait and restored the state of Kuwait to its former Amir or the ruler. Now that is what it was done. Now even in these circumstances, there were criticism at a later stage. The state of the United States should not have intervened. Now you might be knowing there is a justification for this as well. There are plenty of scholars who go to the extent of justifying Saddam Hussein as well. Now we don't have any objection to this, but you have to see the Charter of United Nations does not permit aggression. The whole Charter of United Nations has come in to maintain international peace and security. And in circumstances such as this, when aggression or invasion or annexation is not permitted, here is a state which is known as the state of Iraq, which goes that far wherein it intends to invade and invaded another member of the international community, that is the state of Kuwait. And that is totally unacceptable. And at that time, the members of the international community used the concept of collective security. When I speak about collective security, all against the aggressor. So the aggressor happened to be the state of Iraq, led by Saddam Hussein, and he was punished for this, and the state was given back to the rulers. Now all these issues, when we discuss relating to intervention, you get to know, you come to know, and you realize there are so many problems. Plainly speaking, we can just give, these are the basic principles that should be known to a student of international law. But then, in the chessboard of international politics, naturally at times the existing rules of international law, either they are ignored or at times intentionally, remember, violated. That should not happen.